Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in and joining us for another episode of the Stark Flavor Stories. And I have a super awesome guest on this week that I am excited to have. We have Drew Causey, right? Did I say that
Yeah,
right? I did
perfect.
a little Boston twist on it.
Yeah.
Drew is actually representing an organization that was on our pilot coffee crawl, which is the Speakeasy Coffee and Conversation,
Yeah,
Canal Fulton. Drew, how are you today?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Hi, thank you for joining us. I greatly appreciate it. I know you've got a million things going on in your world, so for you to take some time and join us today, I greatly appreciate it. But one thing that I learned through this process, setting the coffee crawl, is you do not own a coffee shop like most of the coffee
Not
shop.
a traditional business owner now.
Yeah, you work for River Tree
Hmm.
Church and that organization. So, which who happens to own the Speakeasy was something
Hmm.
that I learned. I told you a story off camera, a funny story that your coworker Jana is a good friend of mine I met through some Making Strides, and I make the joke I slid up in the Speakeasy's DMs and said, "Hey, we're doing this," and I just got a phone call from her out of nowhere that was like, "Hey, I got your message," and I was like, "What message?" And that's when I learned that you guys own this organization, which I thought was fascinating. So we're going to
Yeah,
talk a little bit about that and about how those piece together. But first, the whole point of these stories is people getting to know those faces behind the brand. So I want people to get to know you because you have a fascinating story. You're not from Canal Fulton or you're not from Canada
no,
County. So tell people a little bit about your background and how you ended up here as one of those gems that we now have in our community.
thanks. Thanks again for having me on. I'm originally from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. That's where I was kind of born and raised, and uh, kind of moved a couple different places, but was in Kentucky for about 12 years. That's where I met my wife, and we started our family. In 2018, I was invited to come join the staff of River Tree, and not the Canal Fulton campus, actually at the Jackson campus.
Okay.
And I was on staff there for a couple of years until an opportunity to become the campus pastor in Canal Fulton opened up, and just felt like it was the right move for the kind of the person that I'm wired to be, and was excited to do so. But it was also in the midst of 2020, which was an incredibly challenging year.
Right. Right. For everybody, let alone somebody kind of starting a new job we'll get into.
Hmm.
So before we get into that though, the kind of didn't blow my mind, but I was like, that's interesting that an organization like River Tree would have a coffee shop. So explain to people how that kind of came up, because that's not a normal transition I mean, River Tree is a
No,
pretty big organization here in the area, but how did they decide, you know what, we're going to get in the coffee shop business in a place like Canal Fulton? What went into that thought process, and how did we get from that planning to the Speakeasy existing?
well, I think one of the fundamental values of River Tree is just to be like fiercely local. So we have 7 churches that are unique parts of each of the communities that they're in. And so the church in River Tree, Canal Fulton, when it was planted with the idea of whatever we are in the city, it should be good news for the city. Even if it's like, regardless of what people believe, like it should be a good thing that a church is present in a city. And so, and
Love that
kudos.
Canal Fulton. That's so
Yeah,
small and tight knit, and
absolutely. And
that
it's,
down to old school. If you've not been to the Speakeasy, that downtown Canal Fulton is that really old school, like you think of or you see in older movies, like that old
yeah,
downtown that's full of history, and people from there love it there and stay there their whole life.
it's
So
amazing, especially with the towpath coming right through, and
it's
there's ice cream everywhere. I mean, it's perfect.
right.
But yeah, so I there was a point where River Tree Canal Fulton and its leadership approached the city and were just like, "Hey, as we think about what would be good news to the city, like what do we actually need here?" The overwhelming response was, "We need a place where people can meet, where community can be built." There just aren't a lot of places, particularly in the downtown, but generally in Canal Fulton, where like you can build community during the day.
Yeah.
And so there had been research done, like places like Starbucks and Dunkin'. Just Canal Fulton was not a viable place for them to place a business, and
Right.
so our church began to just pray and ask, like, what would it look like if we were to create a space where our community could just grow and build regularly? It would be, one of those third spaces where it's a business, but it's also more than a business, because the goal is really to create a place for connection and conversation and community. And so that's where the idea was kind of built, and River Tree as a whole, because every church is kind of its own thing. They were like, look, it's taking on something we've never done before, but at the same time, this is literally what it means to fight for the good of your city, to create spaces where community can really happen. And so when it launched out, I think it was 2016, like the goal was, let's create a space, even if it's costly. And to be honest, like part of our model was like, this may break even, but if it doesn't,
Hopefully.
well, yeah, but there's a margin where we were like, even us as a church, like this is an investment that we can make in Canal Fulton, to say like, it's worth it. It's worth it for our town to have a place where the kind of community we want to be can actually be cultivated. Yeah. And so that's kind of been a part of the vision of Speakeasy from the get-go. And we haven't marketed it as a River Tree thing, because that's not the point.
Right.
We just want to be good for the city. And so far we've had amazing opportunities to do just that.
That's such a cool story. And I've loved learning that over the past 3-4 months that I've had a chance to meet and talk. And because I love that part where you said, hey, it doesn't matter what your belief system is. Come to us if you want. If it's not for you, that's okay. We're creating something for this community because we believe in this community. And like kind of that branding, the Speakeasy, coffee and conversation, like it all makes sense. But I just think that's such an awesome story. It's like, hey, we're engaging ourselves here in this awesome community, and we don't need to have our name on it. We're doing this for the people in the community. And I just think that's such a great story. And in the way, we'll get down a little bit later in this conversation of the pivots, but the way that community came back and rallied around you.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll get to that point. Let's go through the struggle first. But I think that's something for those of you that have tuned in early, that you definitely want to stay to the end of this, because it's that what you put in will always come back to you. And we always hear that thing of always give and don't expect anything in return, but don't worry, because it always will. Your story that we're telling today is going to be living proof of that. Whatever your belief system is, that will always come back to you, and you just have such a great story of that. So let's just jump into that. Like,
yeah,
you've had some challenges over the last year. We don't need to use the C word or the P word. We know what that is, but you had double the challenge, because not only did you have a small business you were operating, your background is not, let me run small business and be an entrepreneur.
Oh, no.
You're there for the church aspect. So not only were you diving into a new role in a new community, now you had this burden. So let's go through some of what was that moment like, when things started shutting down and you started being like, okay, what's going on? But then what were some of the struggles you went through post that shutdown?
Well, when I came into the role that I'm in now as the campus pastor, it was the middle of 2020 already. So things were shut down. Okay. And I sat down with people, and they were like, all right, if you're going to say yes to the job, here's the actual reality of things. And so I'm facing a reality of church life, which, is not gathering, and that has its own costs. And no church was doing well in 2020. Right. And then you also have this business, which has been dependent on the church's support. So it's basically a double whammy. And so as we sat down, I sat down with all the numbers, and I'm sitting here like, I am not a business person. I have a skill set, and it is not the skill set appropriate for this challenge. And so I sat down with some people who know numbers and made sure that I understood everything I could. And then I sat down with our community and with our church and just said, look, we're going to have some hard choices to make.
Yeah.
And so I am inheriting something that sounds like this was a buy-in from all of us to say, we want to do this for the good of our city. And so if that's the case, then we are going to have to own the debt that we have and how we kind of move forward from this. And so we basically kind of hit it from like three fronts. One, we just looked at the church and said, look, if this is what we're going to do, then we have to do it. Like, I'm not here to raise funds. I will champion things, but like, we have to own the responsibility that we have. Yeah. And then the second thing is we looked to our city and just said, look, we need help. Like just like every small business around, like we are at a point where if things don't change, we're going to have to shut our doors.
Yeah.
And so we created just what we called the Save the Speakeasy campaign. We just made it really simple. We made some shirts, we made some hashtags, and we were just like, we just need to get the word out.
Mhm.
Because one of the things, like you said, like a lot of people don't even know how the Speakeasy is operated or the point of it. And honestly, Canal Fulton is one of those cities where even in my short time in the city, I've seen when people are honest about what they need, you find the generosity of the people around you more available than you would realize.
Right.
And so we just came and said, hey, this is our reality. We're going to push to try to keep the shop open. This is what we need. Like, we need your business. We need your support. We need you to spread the word. So we went to social media and just said, hey, if you're on social media, like, push us out there. Help us begin and let people know, like, we are open. We are selling coffee and it's delicious. Come on in. And
you have a great atmosphere out there. It's one of my favorite things is gotten to know that place.
yeah, it's a really unique place. Just like Canal Fulton, what it is you're not going to find it anywhere else. And so we're like, let's just leverage that.
Mm-hmm.
And what we found is the people that we're connected to in our city, in our community, our patrons, they took it and ran.
Yeah.
And so we were selling t-shirts and doing hashtags and really just trying to, I mean, we streamlined, like our cost of goods, and like we were doing all the business.
The hard decisions you have to make.
Yeah. But at the same point, we were also like, let's just put it out there and lean out and just say, like, we have fought to be good news here. But it's never a one-way relationship. And this was one of those things where we as a church and as a business got to see the good of our city. Like it's a really humbling thing when you come to the point where it's like, we want to be good for everyone else, but we also need everyone else to be good for us. That's what makes a community, is when people are invested in one another. And we saw that in our city. We saw that in the people. And when we put that pleat out, like our business, like our daily numbers, like doubled instantly.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended 2020, like, in the black by the skin of our teeth, but like in a way that seemed impossible when I came on board in August.
Yeah. August to December during a pandemic. That's amazing. And I don't think people always realize, like, unless you've been in those roles, like, so I have a really diverse, weird, I don't know what the appropriate way to say, career background, because I'll just own it. I'm a college dropout that found his way in retail managing for the majority of my 20s, and I found a great career there. And I can always compare it to, when you're driving even a retail store compared to a coffee shop, but companies will always have you'll hear like, oh, this company is closing 100 locations. That doesn't always necessarily mean they're on the verge of bankruptcy. Sometimes it is, especially now in retail, but retail stores will always have this, like, well, this store's not doing well, but it's conveniently located next to two competitors, and anything we can steal from them, we're willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But that's great when things are going well. But then when things start to kind of tighten up and you're kind of like, ooh, we might have to start looking at some things, then those kind of things can't exist anymore. So that doesn't always necessarily mean the end is near for that company, but they've got to make those hard decisions and tight adjustments to kind of right the ship. And, for you guys to say, hey, it's okay if we lose a little bit of money. This is all about the community, and this is, we're doing this great thing. Well, that's great when things are going well. But when things start to tighten up and there's a lot of stuff outside of your control, that all of a sudden, it's still a great idea, but is it manageable for us to continue to operate this? And so
absolutely,
a lot of times when you get to that point, the story is not always a happy ending. So it goes back to what we talked about. You guys have given so much to that community. So then it was that community's time to rally around you.
Oh yeah. And
that's such an amazing story, to highlight.
Well, and they did, and they continue to, and part of it is like, we have the right people in the right places. Like I knew very quickly I had to find somebody who could do what I could not. And so Sharon Hayward's our current manager. She's killing it. Are we like booming now? No, but like we see the future that we're moving towards, and we're excited about it. We feel like we're getting to a point where the world's opening back up, and we are going to be able to get basically like back from off of our heels and
Yeah.
begin to move forward, not just like in the profit margin department, but in the like, let's start being good for our city in ways that we desire to. Because I hate to say it, but when you're in survival mode, like sometimes the things like your big dreams kind of have to take a back seat because you're just like,
Just make
we
it
gotta keep
the
this thing
next week.
afloat.
Right.
But we also saw that the good news was our city. It was the people around us. Like, and all that's going to do is enable us to even push even harder into the future. So,
And that's a sign of one comment you tagged on. That's a sign of a great leader, knowing that I can't do everything and I'm not the best at everything. So I need to surround myself with people in key places that can do the things that I'm not good at. And so for you to be able to realize that is probably part of the reason that you were able to get through that, because sometimes it's hard not to be the guy to say, okay, I know I can do this myself and I'll get us through this. Inevitably, that's not.
oh gosh, no.
So for you to be able to acknowledge that and be able to say, okay, I need to bring these people in, it's great. And it's just such an awesome story, and I think it's amazing. And like you said, sometimes you got to get all hands on deck and just make it to the next day and the next week. But now you're starting to see, like you said, that light at the end of the tunnel. So you're not out of the woods yet. None of us are, but you're starting to have those plans, right? Like, hey, let's get back. So what's next for you guys? What are, for what you're able to tell us at this point? Mid-May. Spoiler alert, we tape these early, so it's actually this will be mid-May when we air
I'm in the future.
Mid-May, where we're at officially today. What can you tell us? What's coming next, or what do you know that's coming down the line?
Well, since April, we have opened up to start doing live music on Saturday nights, which is has always been a great draw. It's a way for us to feature local artists. We are hoping to start doing some open mic opportunities as well. We have expanded our hours. During 2020, our hours were limited because business was limited. And so we've expanded our hours during the week. And on Saturdays, we're open all the way from 8 in the morning till about 9 at night, including the live music stuff. So that's really exciting. And for those who don't know, Canal Fulton has a great little downtown live scene that kind of opens up in the summers. So we're really looking forward to seeing what's happening. There's a bunch of cool stuff. There's a big marathon that's going to be coming through Canal Fulton this summer. Canal Days are on the calendar. So there's a lot of activity coming to the city. And with that, it's good for our business, but it's also a good way for us to keep pouring into the rest of downtown because there's so many amazing things happening down there.
And I want to give a plug to somebody who I love. Her name's Carrie Sullivan.
She's awesome.
The Barrel Room. And she's actually going to be on a guest on a future episode. And Carrie, I'm going to talk about this in her video, but it was so great to us because I've just met Carrie through going to her location, some networking, some restaurant things. But when we were starting this idea of Stark Flavor, we just saw a need, coming out of the last year, and let's support these local restaurants, small businesses. But neither my partner and I have ever worked in the restaurant industry. So we had no clue what we were doing. So there were certain people that worked in this industry that, mind you, during a time that a shutdown was happening and they were fighting for carryout survival, still took time out of their day to have a Zoom call conversation with us and say, how can I help? And Carrie was one of those people who was literally fighting for her livelihood and survival, but still helped us put together this idea of Stark Flavor with her knowledge. And
that's so amazing. I think it's incredible. And like, kudos to you, because the idea that we are better together, and that when we, like, instead of fighting for business, leveraging our businesses for the sake of one another, it's like the idea of, like, when you raise the tide, all the boats rise. Like, it's really good for everyone. Right
now, we're all in this together. Like, you keep hearing those cheesy sayings on all the billboards and TV commercials, but it's true. And Carrie, if people don't know, and I don't know what she's going to want to share on her video because we haven't filmed it yet, but that location in Canal Fulton has just been challenge after challenge for her. But she just keeps going because she believes in that area and she knows what the potential, and she wants to be a part of it. And she's just a scrappy person. You're going to get to know her if you're tuning into this.
It's a great spot. I've met her once, and I'm looking forward. That's one of the things that's also the future that we're hoping for, is like that we continue to learn how to leverage the city for one another. I mean, a big part of it for me is like coming into the town. I joined the chamber. I'm trying to network. I'm trying to connect because, again, like the best resources we have are right around us. We just have to kind of tap into that and be willing to offer ourselves, but also like willing to receive from the people around us.
Well, the first time you and I met, we had talked on the phone a few times, but the first time we met is you approached me at the Canal Fulton Chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to connect there. And I can tell you, so my business partner here at Stark Flavor, his name is John Weston. We both are involved in multiple things, but one of the things he's involved in is he's the current president of the Canal Fulton Chamber in a volunteer basis. And he is really driving he and his group and his board are really driving that, bring that chamber back and strengthen it. Mm-hmm. But it's starting out there. It's an up and coming place because the mayor is all in. The people in key areas are all in, and they're building around that chamber and they're building around that downtown. And sometimes when you get into like city government and things, and I'm assuming this is probably easier in a small town like Canal Fulton than a larger place, but to get everybody on the same page all the time moving in the same direction can be a challenge.
Absolutely.
Seems like, at least at this point, Canal Fulton, they've got it figured out because they're starting to put those things in place to start this comeback. Mm-hmm. And everybody's on the same page and heading in the same direction. And it's really refreshing to see because the future out there is exciting.
Yep.
And they're building the foundation. It has so much potential.
Yeah.
Glass ceiling is limitless with some of those brands and some of those people they have out there. So I'm excited to just keep seeing it grow through John and through his thing and through you guys at the Speakeasy and Carrie and Dragonfly, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
You don't realize how many cool places, the little ice cream place out there. They have so many cool places on those like couple streets. I've been to the something tavern.
Yeah. Miller Down.
Yes. That place was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Such cool place out there that you just do not realize are out there that you need to get out and experience. If you've not been to Canal Fulton, go on a Saturday, grab coffee at the Speakeasy and just walk around and find some of these places. Because I guarantee if you have an afternoon to kill and you just want to experience some cool things, you're going to love downtown Canal Fulton. I will guarantee it. I'm a huge downtown Canton guy through and through, and I support it. But man, do I love me some downtown Canal Fulton.
That's all. Preach, man.
Yeah, exactly. That's your job. But I don't mind being your sidekick. So anything else? Like, what else do you want to throw out? What else do you want to add while we got you here?
No, I would just say, man, thank you a lot of you, if you've been out to the Speakeasy, you're one of the reasons we're still have our doors open. So thanks so much. Yeah. And spread the word. Our story is a story we're proud of. We know it's not the only story like this, but like we've seen the good of what happens, not only when you set yourself to be good news, but you get to receive good news from other people, that you are a part of a community. Like there's no better resource than that. And so.
Sorry, I want to throw one more thing in. And I meant to throw it earlier and I forgot. You guys actually have, and I told you off camera that my friend Sam Brody and I had gotten coffee there one day and she like went crazy in your little like gift section buying local things. Tell people about that because you guys do have a cool little section where people in the community that I know that you had some masks in there for COVID and some honey and some candles. Like you go to the Speakeasy, you kind of pull from some of these local people. Tell people a little bit just about that section before.
So Sharon, our manager, she does a great job of kind of curating and connecting with local artists and artisans.
Yeah.
And so anytime you come in the shop, like it really depends on the season and what people are selling, but we have all sorts of things from local honey to candle making to different arts. We have artists who hang art on the wall, who sell different things. There's just always a pretty wide variety of things. And we're always looking for artisans to feature, especially like locally. Again, we try to be fiercely local. So we're looking for people who are Stark County people that we can kind of put their stuff on display and just create kind of a marketplace for local people who are creating to have a place to connect with the community. So it's pretty exciting, and there's always something new. Like seriously, there's times where I walk in and there's a whole new display, and Sharon's like, "Oh, I connected with so and so, and now we're selling this," and it's pretty cool.
It's that community, and so Drew, you guys are killing it.
Thanks, man.
Hope you have the opportunity to continue killing it because we love it out there. It's one of my new favorite places. It's worth the drive out. I'll drive out there 20 minutes just to have a meeting out there because the atmosphere and everything is great. So. Thank you. We will drop if you're interested in finding out more about the Speakeasy, we will tag them in this post. We'll drop their hours, their website, and things below. If you're interested in learning more, just reach out to them. They're very responsive on their Facebook. Talk to Drew, talk to Sharon, pop in and say hi. So Drew, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
I greatly appreciate more than you know. And just look forward to working with you more and keeping that relationship going, because I've really enjoyed it so far.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike.
To all of you tuning in, thank you, and hope you go check out the Speakeasy, and we will see you on the next episode of the Stark Flavor Stories. Thank you.